My 10-year-old was playing in the street again. I was weeding in the garden when I heard brakes squealing and a horrible crunch. I didn't panic until I looked up and realized I couldn't see Jake. Jake, I hollered, and then repeated myself a couple times louder. I threw off my gloves and wide-brimmed hat and started walking towards the street where a pickup truck was parked in the middle of the road. The driver's side door was opened and a tall man with a pair of dark sunglasses was frozen in place, staring down at something he couldn't understand. I opened my mouth to say something, but it got caught in my throat when my eyes fell on Jake, lying in the middle of the street, mangled beyond recognition. He just, he, he just, the man stuttered, barely able to get the words out. Came out of nowhere. That's when a scream flew out between my lips. Jake, no! Flung myself into the road and got down on my knees next to my boy. He was bloody, and some of his limbs were bent at odd angles. What the hell was he doing playing in the road? Suddenly all the pieces of the puzzle fell into place, and the man in sunglasses realized the severity of what happened, of what he did. I ignored all his yelling and gently felt Jake's wrist to check for a pulse. There wasn't one. He's still breathing, I cried. He's alive. Oh, thank God, the man said, putting a hand over his heart, more relieved for himself than he was for Jake. I'll call an ambulance. The man pulled out his phone, and I screamed at him, "No." "No?" he asked, mid-dial, looking at me confused. "No." I met his eyes and desperation in my voice. I told him, "I can't afford an ambulance." "Forget the cost," he said, exasperated. "We gotta get him to the hospital now." "That's easy for you to say." I sit back at him and then carefully scoop Jake into my arms. "I'll take him myself. I can get him faster anyway." I made a beeline for my garage, trying not to let Jake's broken limbs flop too egregiously, but the man in sunglasses stepped in my way. "At least let me follow behind you. Please. Everything's on the line for me here too." "No. Forgive me if I didn't want to be followed by the man who ran over my son." Stomped around him and hurried through the side door into my garage. I dumped Jake's slim body into the back and then peeled out of the driveway, making sure to be noticed by all the neighbors who had come outside to gawk. I got in the I got on the highway and drove in circles until the sun set. I carefully made my way back home, making sure to turn off my headlight a block away from home. If possible, I didn't want anybody to see me come back with Jake still lying lifelessly in the back. After the garage door shut, I sat into the driver's seat for 15 minutes to make sure nobody was going to come over to ring my doorbell. Once I was sure I was alone, I got out the car, opened the back, grabbed Jake by the ankle and dragged him out of the car. I dragged him into the house, through the kitchen, and then I dragged him down into the basement, making sure to bump his adorable little head on every stair along the way. I didn't stop until we were far away from prying eyes. "Get up, Jake," I sternly said, barely above a whisper. Jake lay there on the basement carpet, limbs still twisted beyond recognition. Even though it was hours later and he was dead, he was still bleeding. "Jacob Cornelius Goodman, I can tell that you're faking, and if you don't get up right now, you're going to be in big trouble." Jake gasped a big, huge breath, and then his limbs started to twist themselves back into place. He looked perfectly normal. He sat up suddenly and then gave me a very grumpy look. "Mother," he said, rather politely, "why aren't I at the hospital?" "Because I didn't take you to the hospital." Jake crossed his arms and began to pout. "I wanted to go to the hospital, Mother," Jake whined. "I wanted to be surrounded by blood and death." I got down on one knee and stared into his glowing red eyes. Little boys who don't listen to their mothers don't get to be surrounded by blood and death. How many times have we got to tell you not to play in the street? Jake frowned. "How many?" I repeated myself. "A lot," Jake uttered. "And what did you do?" "This is unfair." Jake stood up and began stomping his feet. You never let me revel in bloodshed and misery. Throwing a tantrum isn't going to win you any points, mister. If that man tried to follow me to the hospital, we would have had to move again. You know how hard it is for me to find a new job every 6 months? Jake's glowing red eyes hit the floor. Very hard, he murmured. Very hard is right, I said, placing my hands on his rosy red cheeks. But I do it because I love you very much. I even love you when you jump in front of cars for the fun of it. But from now on, I want you to behave and listen to Mom. Do you understand? I understand. How about this? Tomorrow I'll drive you to the cemetery. That way you can be surrounded by all the death and misery you want. Jake smiled, with that devious little grin of his, and nodded his head. You're the best ever, Jake said. And he gave me a great big hug. My skin has never looked better. My skin's never looked better lately. My friends keep asking me what I've been doing. I just smile and tell them it's vitamins. The kind that costs half my monthly salary. Stand in front of the mirror and run my fingers slowly across my arms. My skin feels soft, smooth, almost too smooth. At work, people keep staring. I pretend not to notice. Joy, you look amazing lately, Pla says. Pla is from the mountains. Ever since she came from visiting home, she's been wearing thick makeup every day, heavy foundation, layers of sunscreen that make her face look pale and chalky. But I know I look better. Today I hit the highest sales at the office. By the time I get home, I'm exhausted. There's white dust scattered across the floor again. Some of it hangs in the air like powder. Probably pollution. The city's been full of it lately. I shower, letting the water wash away the fine powder clinging to my skin, then collapse into bed. The next morning, the room is filled with it. White particles floating in the sunlight. The pollution index must be terrible today. My throat itches. I cough, then cough again. When I sneeze, a thick cloud of white dust bursts from my mouth, drifting slowly through the air before dissolving into tiny particles. I froze. Slowly, I walked to the mirror. My skin looks pale and velvety, like it's been lightly dusted with powder. Beneath the surface, something moves. I lean closer. Under the smooth skin, thin white threads weave through my body like delicate webs. They twitch slightly. I hear a thumping sound. It's my heart echoing in my ears. I stepped backwards. My arms bumps into the dining table. The flesh sinks in like a wet sponge. A hollow dent forms in my arm. The smell of damp soil bursts into the room, and I stare at it. My reflection stares back. A chunk of my arm is missing its shape. The surface collapsed inward where it hit a table. What am I? My mouth opens to scream, but no sound comes out. Instead, something inside me whispers, go outside. Go find people. I go to work. Everywhere I walk, I feel eyes following me. Or maybe they know. Lunch? Pla asks. We walk to the cafeteria together. I keep a careful distance, tugging my sleeve down to hide the strange shape of my arm beneath the fabric. The smell from my own body mixes with Pla's overly sweet perfume. It makes me nauseous. I push the food around my plate, unable to eat. A pressure builds inside my chest. My temple twitches. Even though my body should be full of soft sponge, like flesh wrapped around white threads, my lungs keep producing more of that powder. It gathers in my throat. I want to cough. I force myself to swallow it back down. The harsh sun drains the last of my strength. When I get home, evening rain has begun to fall. Moisture fills the air. I fall asleep immediately in the corner of my room. The next morning, the room is even thicker with that white powder. I inhale deeply. For some reason, it feels comforting. I walk to the mirror again. The room is dim and damp, but my skin glows faintly in the dark. A new dent has formed in my right leg. At work, Pla approaches me like always. The moment she gets close, a tingling sensation spreads beneath my skin. Something pushes me outward from the tip of my index finger. White threads, searching, reaching. They stretch toward Pla. The network of fibers inside my body trembles. My heart pounds with them. I quickly clasp my hands together, just as Pla touches my shoulder. The threads shoot out, attaching to her hand. They slip beneath her fingernails, climb her arm, her neck. Something warm spreads inside my chest, a strange sense of satisfaction. Fla's face doesn't change. She simply looks at me. I follow the thin white threads crawling up her skin. They lead to her ear. Behind it, a small white gill-shaped growth, dusted with powder, hidden beneath layers of thick foundation. My hand rises slowly to touch my own ear. My fingers brush against thin, overlapping plates. Soft, fragile. Pla meets my eyes. The corner of her mouth lifts slightly. Tomorrow, I say quietly, I think I'll wear makeup like yours.